In A Song of Ice and Fire, the realms of Westeros quickly descend into madness and chaos with the death of King Robert Baratheon. After a hunt with the boar goes wrong, the kingdoms are left without a leader, and in the absence of his best friend, Ned Stark must choose a fitting replacement. With his last words, King Robert asked Ned to look after his son Joffrey, and make him into a better man than he was as he grew into the crown. But unbeknownst to the king, Joffrey was not his son, but instead the child of his uncle, Jaime Lannister the Kingslayer. Therefore, as law dictates, he has no claim on the Iron Throne as a baseborn child conceived through incest. And considering Joffrey's parents tried to kill his son Bran, there was no way that Ned would ever support him in any capacity. The logical, or lawful choice of inheritance was the king's younger brother Stannis, who resided on Dragonstone, as he's the oldest living male descendant of the Baratheon family, making his claim much stronger than someone like Joffrey. But as Ned deliberates on the next move, he's presented with another option in the form of the king's youngest brother, Renly. Though the last in the line of succession, unlike his brother Stannis, Renly is well liked by many people. He's charismatic, politically knowledgeable, and in the books he's even said to resemble a young Robert, before he let himself go. Renly offers to help Ned take control of the capital and remove the Lannisters from power, if it means that he gets to become king. He believes that he's a better fit for the Iron Throne than his brother Stannis. Even though Stannis is a soldier, that doesn't mean that he's going to be a good ruler. Robert was also a soldier, and his reign was nothing to write home about. Ned doesn't go for the deal though, since it goes against the law, even when Renly points out that the law didn't matter when he overthrew the Mad King with his brother. But what if Ned hadn't rejected his offer? How could the story change if Ned sided with Renly and actually helped him seize the Iron Throne for himself? Let's find out. When Renly details his plan to secure Cersei and claim the Iron Throne, almost everything in Ned tells him that this offer can't be taken seriously. For all his shortcomings, Stannis is the oldest of Robert's remaining brothers, and a commander proven, tested and tempered in the fires of war, like the Siege of Storm's End or the Greyjoy Rebellion. Renly at most is just a very charismatic young man, someone untried when it comes to the roles of leadership, even if he had a place on Robert's small council. There's no guarantee that he would be a better king than Stannis, and this whole plan is nothing more than a glorified power grab. He wants to turn Renly down, believing that this isn't honorable. It goes against the laws of succession. But in this timeline, Ned lingers on this thought for a moment, on what Renly had to say to him, how succession doesn't matter. It held no weight when he and Robert took the Iron Throne. Even though Robert had a grandmother who was a Targaryen princess, there were still others with stronger claims than him. And after the war was done, it's not like he tried to make Viserys king and uphold the status quo, even though he was named heir by King Aerys after the death of Rhaegar, and crowned on Dragonstone as king by his mother Rhaela. When the time was right, Ned bent and broke the rules for the sake of a better realm. So with that in mind, Ned wonders how this is any different. Either way, things could, and would, eventually come to blows. So is it not better to make a compromise for the time being? Deal with the Lannisters now, get someone who has a reasonable claim on the throne, and then, when his family's safety is assured, really take the time to decide what the next steps should be. As it stands, he can't take the Lannisters alone, and Renly is offering him a way to fight back. He can take control of the situation without any unnecessary harm, and uphold order by getting Renly on the throne. Once they secure the keep, then the realm, maybe this topic of succession can be revisited. For now, Ned has limited options, and at this point in the story, he hasn't even thought about asking Littlefinger to get him help with the gold cloaks to overthrow Cersei. So Renly is really the only option he has in his eyes if he wants to fight back and restore some semblance of order to the realm. So for the sake of getting the Lannisters in check, Ned decides to take up his offer. Renly is pleased with this arrangement, glad that Ned finally saw sense, and says he'll have men for Ned within the hour to help him take control. The youngest Baratheon brother then leaves, and Ned is left to plan his next moves. Now, despite siding with Renly, I don't believe that Ned would ever fully be on board with making him king of the Seven Kingdoms over his older brother, even in light of Renly's logic on succession and his own actions years ago. It's against the law, after all, for him to pass up his older brother. Then again, so was Ned's rebellion and seizure of the throne through Robert, but this isn't a video about Ned's hypocrisy. Like canon, in the absence of Renly, Ned will write a letter to Stannis in the moments before the death of King Robert, detailing the truth of the situation and his plan to take the throne through Renly, before dispatching one of his household guards to deliver this message to Dragonstone. Sometime later, Ned will be given the news of King Robert's death, and will be tasked to swear fealty to the new King Joffrey. Unlike the canon timeline, Ned will offer no resistance in this situation. He considers it for a moment, revealing King Robert's dying words in hopes that some among the crowd, more honorable than others, would rise to his call and seize the pretenders. But with his men so few and many others loyal to the Lannisters and the gold they bring in, it seems like a fruitless effort without Renly's men to assist him in the cause. So Ned kneels and swears his loyalty to the rightful heir of King Robert Baratheon, notably refusing to refer to Joffrey by name at this moment, something the Lannisters don't pick up on. Cersei is the most pleased by this development, believing that she's finally won, having gotten Ned to bend the knee to her, and makes plans to have a conversation with him later on to discuss how things will be from this moment moving forward. But the Queen is in for a rude awakening, as later on that day, Renly makes a discreet return with men for Ned, and later on, as night falls, the castle sleeps, the wolf and the stag strike. There's fighting throughout the castle, screams echoing, blood spilling, as the Queen and her family are taken into custody. The Hound puts up a good fight as he tries to defend his employers, but eventually he's overwhelmed and subdued. The same is said for Barristan Selmy, who Ned and Renly would have given express orders to not be harmed or killed during the takeover. By the end of the night, Ned takes his place on the Iron Throne, and the royal captives are dragged into the throne room before him. It is at this moment that Ned reveals the dying words of King Robert, which proclaim him as protector of the realm until Robert's heir comes of age. And here, before gods and men, and the brother of Robert as a witness, he declares that Cersei Lannister's children have no claim to the Iron Throne, like he did in canon, and are to be kept under guard until it can be decided what to do with them. With the Kingsguard subdued, the Lannister soldiers dealt with, there is no one to oppose Ned and Renly as they seize the throne. And when the time comes, and all is secure, Ned steps down and seizes the throne to Prince Renly, so that he may take control. Despite his reservations on the matter, Ned is a bit smarter in this timeline, and knows that in this moment, he can't deny Renly the Iron Throne. He's well aware that at this point, the men that Renly called to help him take the castle are more than likely just loyal to him and him alone. And while their numbers may have waned, fighting the Kingsguard and the Lannister men-at-arms, they could still easily overwhelm Ned and his men, who would have also suffered losses in the conflict if he tried to stop Renly from ascending to the throne. So he has no choice but to give up the throne to the youngest of the Baratheon brothers. Renly then proclaims himself as the first of his name, and the rightful king of Westeros with the death of his brother Robert, and the pretenders taken into custody. He orders a crown be commissioned for him, and his coronation to be held within the week. There would be some among the counselors displeased with this arrangement, but none have the capacity to fight back against Renly. With Renly now on the throne, and his family safe, Sansa not being taken hostage, and Arya not being forced to run away, I believe that Ned will begin making arrangements to leave King's Landing as soon as possible, as he knows that even with Renly on the throne, they are bound for conflict. Tywin, when he finds out, won't take kindly to his family being taken hostage. Then there will still be those who call Joffrey the king, and soon enough, Stannis will come to claim what's rightfully his. And despite helping Renly seize it, Ned still believes that it belongs to Stannis. So it would be better if he put himself into a position where he could actually help Stannis take it back from his brother. So in this timeline, Ned does side with Renly, but the affair is brief, as even with the logic behind his argument, Ned is still an honorable fool at heart, and Renly being made king over his older brother goes against Ned's beliefs, even if they're flawed. I believe that once Renly catches wind of Ned preparing to leave, he would do his best to try and convince Lord Stark to stay at his side and remain as Hand of the King, as he earned the position. But more than that, Ned remaining would strengthen Renly's image in the eyes of the people. If he has the Hand of the King, the best friend of his older brother, standing beside him during these times, it all but confirms his rule and support, as the man that Robert trusted the most chose to stand by him. But Ned refuses, relaying the fact that he's a bit fed up with court now. The political scheming, the usurping, it's all more than he can handle, more than he signed up for. The main reason he even came to King's Landing was to help Robert, and figure out why Jon Arryn was killed. Now, Robert is dead, and as far as he knows, Jon's killers have been apprehended. So he no longer has a place here and would like to go home, if only to make sure his daughters can get there safely. Renly would allow this to happen. I don't believe he detained Ned. At this point, Ned helped him take the Iron Throne, and he has no reason to suspect that he's going to turn on him for Stannis. And he doesn't want to take Ned hostage to ensure that the North supports him when fighting breaks out. That's a sure way to make enemies of the North, and we know that Renly has some level of honor. After all, he didn't take Catelyn prisoner during the War of Five Kings to try and blackmail the North into supporting him. He was very respectful, and even offered somewhat reasonable terms in the long run to Robb. I don't believe he'd have an issue letting Ned go home in that case. So Ned, his men, his daughters, along with Syrio Forel, who wouldn't have been killed or disappeared in the conflict, would go back to Winterfell, traveling by ship as it would be much safer. Before they leave though, Ned would ask Renly what will happen to the children of Cersei. In canon, he didn't want them harmed in any way, as them being born as they were wasn't their fault. And he desperately wanted to avoid them getting the same treatment as Prince Rhaegar's children during the rebellion, courtesy of the Lannisters. Renly will tell Ned that for the time being, no harm would come to them. Cersei and the kids will remain as hostages to be leveraged against Tywin Lannister, and if all goes well, he might give Cersei back to her father, as some form of a peace offering. And when it comes to the children, Myrcella may be sent to the Fae to be trained as a Septa, and the boys, Joffrey and Tommen, may be sent to the Wall as a means of getting rid of more potential claimants to the throne. In the meantime, after Ned departs for home, Renly would send out letters calling the banners of Storm's End and the Reach to help him secure the capital and prepare for war. Since he knows, soon enough, Tywin will catch wind of this, and his terror campaign in the Riverlands will be halted as he diverts his attention to King's Landing, in hopes of freeing his family and reinstalling them to power. Renly finds it best to be prepared for this, along with his brother Stannis, who will undoubtedly make a move for King's Landing when the time is right. But as it stands, Tywin is the most pressing concern, as his army is close in the Riverlands, and could easily make the trek to King's Landing. So Renly's goal will be to keep Joffrey's overthrow as quiet as possible, so his forces from the Reach and Stormlands have time to make it to King's Landing, so they can actually defend it. During this time, Littlefinger will be thinking of ways to capitalize on the situation. Knowing that Renly is doing his best to fortify the city before Joffrey's overthrow becomes public knowledge, he could let Tywin know things in advance. That way, Renly could be attacked when he's most vulnerable, before his troops arrive. But I actually think that Littlefinger will hold off on his slimy tactics for the time being, wanting Renly to gather his forces. As more power Renly has, the more damage that will be caused in the event of a war. More damage means more chaos, and more opportunity for him to climb that ladder. With that in mind, he'll continue watching from the sidelines, and I also believe that he'd intercept any messages Maester Pycelle may attempt to send to Tywin to warn him about what's happening in King's Landing, as he is deathly loyal to House Lannister. In time, the forces of the Reach and the Stormlands will arrive at King's Landing. Renly will be officially crowned king, and his coronation will be announced publicly, along with his marriage to Margaery Tyrell, who will be more than thrilled to finally be queen of the Seven Kingdoms now. But of course, that doesn't mean that everything's going to go smoothly for them. They may have taken the throne, but they still have to keep it. Tywin will eventually hear about all of this, and he will not be happy. He and Jaime would immediately begin making plans for retaliation. Jaime would still be around and fighting with Tywin, since in this timeline, Ned was never taken prisoner, and the North never rose in rebellion to get him back. So there was no Battle of Whispering Wood, and he was never captured by Robb. Jaime would not be happy, knowing that his sister and children were imprisoned and at the mercy of Renly. He'd want to assault King's Landing immediately, but I believe that Tywin wouldn't want to go that far just yet. With the Tyrells and the Stormlands defending the fortified city, it would be difficult to take King's Landing even with their army, as they have to get past the walls and all the soldiers inside. I think instead, Tywin would opt to abandon the Riverlands and attack the Stormlands instead, as a way to force Renly's hand, either to lure him away from the city so that they can kill him in battle without having to lay siege to King's Landing, or to force him to release Cersei and the children if he doesn't want his homeland to be destroyed. Tywin would want to assault and take castles during this fight, primarily Storm's End, Renly's old seat of power, since it would be a pretty heavy blow to his image, like it was for Robb when Winterfell was taken by Theon. Either way, to be entirely honest, a fight doesn't look like it would be the best for Tywin, as the Lannisters are pretty outnumbered with the Reach and Stormlands working together, but that doesn't mean that Tywin will just lay down and roll over because of that. Though outside of him, there's still another threat to worry about. Stannis would be gathering his forces on Dragonstone in hopes of facing Renly on the field and taking the throne from him. He'd send out letters declaring his claim to the Iron Throne as the rightful king and demanding fealty from his vassals. In this timeline, with Ned alive, he'd be among the first to side with Stannis, as he believed from the start that he was the rightful king and would begin to mobilize the North to help him take the throne from Renly. But knowing Stannis, even if Ned does help him take the throne, that would still result in some punishment for Ned later on, as Ned Stark still actively participated in treason by giving Renly his throne. And as he once said, a good act does not wash out the bad. But I believe that Ned will be more than willing to accept that if it means setting things right. This would make things a lot worse for the Lannisters when it comes to the conflict, as not only do they have to fight Renly and the Reach, they need to deal with Stannis, who has the North through Ned, and likely the Riverlands through his marriage to Catelyn, and they would definitely still be mad about his terror campaign. But in light of that, there would still be some hope, as their main silver lining in this event is that Stannis wouldn't be attacking them immediately. Right now, he wants Renly and the Iron Throne, which gives them a chance for victory later on after these armies have dwindled themselves down fighting each other. But to be honest, I don't think that there would be much conflict between the Baratheon brothers. Like canon, I believe that Renly and Stannis would meet up to discuss terms of surrender. Stannis would be willing to give Renly some leeway as his brother, and a level of forgiveness if he gives up the throne and lets Stannis take his rightful place as ruler, something that Renly will ultimately refuse. In light of this, even with his large army through the North and Riverlands, the Tyrells combined with the Stormlands is still a big threat to Stannis. And because he wants to effectively deal with Tywin later on, I believe that Stannis would once again find a way to murder Renly with a shadow baby, so he can take his men, the throne, and focus all of his efforts on dealing with Tywin. With Renly now gone, I believe that the Tyrells would flee King's Landing with haste. I don't think that they would try and hold the capital, because at the end of the day, they just wanted Marjorie to be queen, not take the throne for themselves. And each day they stay in King's Landing, they run the risk of being taken prisoner by Stormlanders as they slowly begin flocking to Stannis. And if they get caught, that may very well mean they die. Now Stannis, after ridding himself of his competition, would refocus his efforts on eliminating the Lannisters and securing the Stormlands. So if Ned were to take Renly's offer, he would become king, but it would be for a very short time as Ned betrays him and his brother eventually assassinates him to claim the throne for himself. Now the Lannisters are left alone to deal with the combined might of the Riverlands, Stormlands, and the North, with their only real hope of survival being the Tyrells who fled. Though that's only if they can make an alliance with them, which could be possible if they make a deal for Joffrey and Marjorie to wed each other once he's freed from his capture. And that's if Stannis hasn't killed him already. That being said, the Iron Islands would eventually pop into this conflict as well, to try and take the North and get their independence back, but this wouldn't go well for them, as Theon will not be going back home, with Ned still in charge and the Starks not needing the Greyjoys' help. So Winterfell is never taken, as that was Theon's plan, and Bran and Rickon are never displaced as a result. So there are some more benefits to Ned taking Renly's deal. But ultimately, war was going to break out as long as there were other claimants to the throne. Difference is here, Stannis gets the throne, and the Starks live to see another day. And with Barristan Selmy never being removed from the Kingsguard, Daenerys might get stung by that scorpion overseas. But that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell me your thoughts down below, and I will see you all next time.